Welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and today we are going to be doing a video where I talk about my favorite new authors that I've read so far in 2023. I wanted to also include authors who I had maybe read one book by in previous years, and I read like a lot more of them this year. So I do have two authors who I have previously read before this year, but I didn't really like start to love them or like read a lot of their books until this year. I hope that makes sense. I make it a goal of mine every year to read new to me authors. It is one of my main goals because I do have this problem of when I find an author that I love, I read their entire backlist, and so it can be difficult for me to start new authors because I'm like, I have so many books by these authors that I love that I want to read from that I tend to stick with those. But last year I did a really good job reading new authors, and this year it's been a little less of, I haven't read as many new authors that I would like, but for this video, I have 6 that I'm going to talk about that are authors that I love that I think that you should try out if you haven't already. So the first one that I want to mention is Elsie Silver. Elsie Silver is an author who blew up at the end of last year and who I didn't start reading until this year. I read the first 3 books in her new series. I haven't read her old series yet. They don't have audiobooks, but the new series does, and I have read Flawless, Heartless, and Powerless, and Reckless comes out in a couple of days, so I will be reading Reckless as soon as it comes out. But so far I have read the first 3 books and I have really enjoyed them. I gave 4 stars to Flawless, 5 stars to Heartless, and 4 stars to Powerless. I did absolutely love Heartless, just like I thought I would. Every single person that I've talked to has absolutely loved Heartless, and it really does live up to the hype. So if you are somebody who is suspicious of the hype, this one does really live up to the hype. It is a absolutely beautiful story, and Elsie Silver is a beautiful writer in general. So this series follows a group of brothers or friends who live in this small town and who work or own this ranch. And the first book is a enemies to lovers-ish forced proximity, technically sports romance, because the hero is a bull rider and the heroine is somebody who is hired to basically babysit him because he has insulted some of his big sponsors. The second one, Heartless, which is my favorite one, is a age gap nanny romance. The hero is a single father and he's very gruff and he needs someone to help watch his son for the summer, and the heroine is the best friend of the heroine from book 1 and she becomes his nanny, and they have amazing tension, amazing banter, and it is a fantastic romance and I loved it so freaking much. The heroine in that one is my favorite. She is so relatable and so good. And then the third one is Powerless, and it is a friends to lovers romance. The hero is a hockey player named Jasper, and the heroine is actually supposed to be getting married, and then she runs away from her wedding, and she and Jasper end up rekindling not just their friendship but their crushes that they had on each other when they were younger but never acted on, and they finally act on them. And it was a really sweet friends to lovers romance, and I don't always love friends to lovers romance, but I did think that that one was done very well and was just so freaking cute. So I am super excited about Reckless. It is the 4th one, and it is about Winter, who is a character who I've wanted a book from since book 1, and she is the heroine from book 1's sister, and in book 1 they have a huge falling out and there are a lot of like secrets or things that are revealed, and they leave a very interesting plot line for Winter to have, and she ends up I believe with another bull rider. And so I'm very, very excited about that book. But if you haven't read or picked up Elsie Silver yet, I highly, highly recommend it. She does really live up to the hype. She has a really beautiful writing style that's just really captivating. So I'm really hoping that the audiobooks for her old series come out soon, because I do very much so want to read that series as well. The next author that I have is Kelly Fox. If you have been an avid watcher of my channel, you will know that a month or two ago, I started a binge of Kelly Fox. I ended up becoming like weirdly obsessed with her and read like 8 books in a row of hers. So the series that I started with that I loved the most is her Momsters and Billionaires series, which is actually technically later on the timeline than the second series that I read by her, which was the Wrecked Guardians. But she has a lot of series. She has the Wrecked series, and she has the Wrecked Guardian series, then she has the Mobsters and Billionaires series, and then she has the, I think it's called something about a ranch series, which I haven't read yet, but that's the next up on my list to read from her. But the Mobsters and Billionaires series was definitely my favorite. It was the first that I read from her. And this one is she calls it Murder Swoon, which I really, really love. So each series that I've read so far is 4 books, or that I've seen so far from her are 4 books, and they follow very different things, but they're all MM. And the Mobsters and Billionaires series in particular is each book follows a billionaire, and all of the other heroes, all of the love interests for the billionaires have mob ties, and they're really good mobsters, if that makes sense. They're the kind of people that are good guys but are okay with bending the law in order to protect their family, protect their loved ones, protect the good of society. And I really, really loved this series. My favorite one was the 4th one, and it's so good. It's so good. And I would highly, highly recommend her books. They are very similar to, or at least the Mobsters and Billionaires series really reminded me of Onley James's Necessary Evil series. So if you love Onley James's Necessary Evil series, I would recommend the Mobsters and Billionaires series by Kelly Fox, which is actually why I originally read it. I had a subscriber tell me that it was similar to Necessary Evils when I said that I wanted more of Necessary Evils, and she was very, very right. I highly agree with her and would highly recommend it. Because her books are just really, really fun. They're very easy to read. I binged 8 of them in a row in no problem. And I listened to the audiobook of the first Mobsters and Billionaires book, but I read the ebooks of the rest of the series and of the whole Wrecked Guardian series. So both the audiobooks or the ebooks are very good, and I would very much highly recommend it. She has become a favorite author of mine this year, and I will definitely be reading her Ranch, I can't remember what it's called, but Ranch series next. The next author is actually author who I've just become obsessed with in the last month, and that is Laura Pavlov. So I read the first book in the Honey Mountain series. I started reading it multiple months ago, like at the really beginning of the year, and I ended up pausing it because I was not really a fan of it. I just didn't really want to DNF it, but I was not really loving it, and so I just put it down halfway through and decided to just read other things. But I ended up in this past month getting an arc of Under the Stars by Laura Pavlov, which is book 2 in her Cottonwood Cove series, and I fucking loved it. I loved it. Gave it 5 stars. It is a Grumpy Sunshine workplace CEO assistant romance, and I was obsessed with it. I gave it 5 stars. It was my favorite book that I read last month, and I am so happy that I read it. And because I loved that one so much, I ended up going back and reading the first book in the Cottonwood Cove series, which I also really loved. I gave it 4.5 stars. And then after that, I was like, I really love this small town vibe. I'm in a small town mood, and I love the family dynamics. And that was one of my favorite things about her books that I was reading, was all of the siblings are really close. They have this group chat where they keep in contact, and had me laughing out loud. It was so funny. And so I decided, I was like, I still have that first book in the Honey Mountain series, so I decided to read it. I did end up giving it 3 stars. It was not my favorite. However, I was loving the family dynamic in that one too. That series follows sisters, and I was like, I want to read more. I want to try more. And I ended up reading the entire Honey Mountain series, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave the majority of the books 4 stars. I think I gave 1 5 stars, but they're really good, really fun, great small town romances, and have really fantastic relationships and family connections in them, because the sisters are very close. They lost their mother when they were young. They're raised by a single father who's a firefighter, and they just have great, great elements. It's such a fun small town, and I really, really loved all of their romances and how different the sisters are, but how they always have each other's backs. And I don't have a sister, so I always really was intrigued by how sisters were, and I love a series that follow sisters or follow siblings in general, and so I really, really enjoyed it and would really highly recommend it if you love small town romances. She really reminded me of Claire Kingsley's small town romances or anything like that. I really do love a good small town, and these were so fun and would highly recommend them. The next one that I have is Lola Rock. So this one, I've actually only read 2 books by her because she only has 2 books out. But the books that she has out are the Pack Darling duet, which is an Omega-verse reverse harem duet that is a bully romance in the first book and then a groveling in the second book. And I freaking loved it. I gave the first book 4.5 stars and the second book 5 stars. I was in love with this duet. I read it in January, I believe, and I am chomping at the bit to have more books from Lola, and so I wanted to include her on this list because the 2 books that she has out I fucking loved, and so I'm really, really hoping that she releases a new book soon. I am in her Facebook group, and it looks like she's in the middle of working on something, so I'm really excited for it to come out, and I wanted to include her in this video because I did really fucking love the Pack Darling duet. Like I said, the first book is a bully romance, so the heroine is an Omega who is basically a ward of the state, and she gets blackmailed into joining a pack, but the pack doesn't want her, and they basically bully her to try and prove to her that they want her out, that they try and get her to leave. But she's been blackmailed to be there, so she really can't leave. And then in the second book, they realize what a mistake they've made, and they spend the entire book groveling and changing themselves and making amends to get her back. And I really, really loved it. I loved the heroine, whose name I cannot remember. I thought that the relationships with all of the men were so intriguing, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I wanted to include her on this list. Then the next 2 authors that I have are the ones that I have previously read from but started to love this year. The first one being Tessa Hale. Tessa Hale writes reverse harem romances. They're paranormal. I had read one series of 3 books by her last year, and I wanted to try more this year. I did enjoy the series that I read last year, but it was high school aged, which I was not the biggest fan of. But I did go and read more from her this year, and I binged a whole series by her and have started another one, and I really, really, really enjoy them. They are very short. They're usually 3 books each of the series, but they're really short. The audiobooks are super quick and easy to listen to. They're reverse harems, but they go by very quickly, and I think that the paranormal aspects are really intriguing. Each of the books that I've read by her have very different paranormal aspects, which I think is so fun. You never really know what you're getting. I think the first series that I read by her was like werewolf shifters, and then the second one, they were like elemental powers, and then this one that I'm reading now is like, you haven't really discovered because I've only read the first book in the series, but it seems completely different. Like, they all have very different powers, and I really, really like it. One of the reasons why I love reverse harem romances is because you always get multiple different tropes with one book, because each of the men have different relationship aspects with the heroine. So you get an enemies to lovers, you get a friends to lovers, you get a sweetheart hero, those kind of things. And I love how many different ones we have gotten in each of Tessa's series. And I think my favorite that I've read from her so far was the Elemental series, but the series that I just started, that I've read the first book from, that is currently coming out, is really good and has the potential to be a new favorite series from her. So would recommend if you love paranormal, if you like reverse harem, and if you need something that's quick and easy. Then the last author is another one who I read from previously, and that is Lucy Score. I had read one book by Lucy Score last year, which was Things We Never Got Over, and this year I read 4 or 5 other books by her, and I really enjoyed them. My favorite from her has been her Blue Moon series, which is a small town romance series, and it's so freaking fun. I will say that the Blue Moon series is in third person, so if that's not your vibe, I understand. It was a little harder to get into in the beginning to like convince my brain to understand what was happening because it is third person, but I ended up overall really, really enjoying it and not even minding that it was in third person, especially because I was listening to the audiobooks. I think if I had read the ebooks or the physical book, I would have been a little bit more jarred by the fact that it was third person, but because it was the audiobook and I was having it read to me, it was easier for the third person. But love the small town. I love the brothers and their relationships with their heroines, and I think it's so, so sweet. It's one of those really nosy small towns where they have this like matchmaking like group who are in the town, part of the town, and they call it the beautification committee, and they're like trying to get people in the town in relationships, and it's so funny, and everyone just kind of knows everyone and is super freaking nosy, and it's really cute and fun, and I am excited to read even more from Lucy Score. I do have a couple of new books that I've just gotten from her that I want to try. I got Rock Bottom Girl and I got Pretend You're Mine, I think, and so I have even more that I want to read from her. I did actually meet her this year. I went to a signing for the second book in the Things We Never Got Over series, and she's really, really nice, and I really liked her, so I'm excited to read even more books from her, and I've really loved her books this year. So that is the last author that I was going to mention. Like I said in the beginning, I do have a lot more authors that I need to try and get to this year. And there are some authors that I have gotten to this year that I've really, really loved, but I've only read one book by them. So I didn't really include those authors in this video because I've only read one book by them. But I am excited to read even more from those authors and share them with you in a future video. But that's going to be it for this one. So let me know down in the comments below who's your favorite new to you author this year so far. But that's going to be it, so I hope that you have the absolute best day.